What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. And today we have an interview from EthanWX. There is a pretty powerful nor'easter that is expected to hit New York, New England, around the Boston area, and I figured I should get some insight from this. So joining us from Maryland is EthanWX. Ethan, how are you doing?
Really good. How about you?
I'm doing great, all right, you want to get right into this?
Yeah, let's talk about this nor'easter.
All right, so my first big question to you is what do you think of this nor'easter? What have you been looking at, and what can you kind of take away from that?
Well, this storm pretty uptrended, The storm really just kind of uptrended on all the models. It popped up, just 2 days ago, But NWS has been pretty quick to issue warnings with it, so hopefully people are going to take it seriously, even though it kind of wasn't super well forecasted out ahead of time like previous storms have been. But
right.
Yeah, if we look right now, we have winter storm warnings across much of New England, basically all of eastern New York, a lot of Vermont, Massachusetts.
Yeah, and I've already pulled that up. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just for the audience sake, I've pulled up those warnings. We're going to hopefully talk about a couple of these. But yeah, please continue. My apologies.
And then we have winter storm watches across the lower half of Maine, coastal areas of Maine, as the storm is expected to also make landfall in Massachusetts and then wrap back around and hit those areas too. I do assume that those will be upgraded to winter storm warnings shortly. Because I think there's pretty high confidence that those areas will be heavily impacted as well.
Right. Okay. So now that we've talked about this, what is the timing of this from what you have seen? From what I've seen the winter storm warnings going in effect at 8 p.m. When could we start seeing snow/rain for some of these areas?
Well, we're already seeing light rain right now across a lot of New England. Intermittent rain showers that are increasing in duration and frequency, but there's really not anything crazy going on. We have temperatures right now, mostly mid to high 30s. And in some areas, higher elevations, you probably have some snow mixing in now, but really, things aren't going to really get going until later tonight. Like you said, 8 p.m. is when most of the winter storm warnings go into effect. I would say right then is about when the heavier precip starts moving in, and then looking at the HRRR by 11 p.m., to midnight is when we see a quick change over to snow for most areas and much more intense precip.
Yeah, and I have the HRRR pulled up just for the audience.
So yeah, I would say if you are in, anywhere in the eastern half of New York, basically anywhere upstate from Westchester or Yonkers, or if you're in, northern Connecticut, western Massachusetts, anywhere in Vermont, basically if you're in those areas, I would say stay at home. Don't be traveling past, 8 p.m. tonight.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. How much snow could we see from this?
Now, this is going to be a very elevation-dependent storm because in some areas the temperatures will actually remain close to the freezing mark. But yeah, as I'm looking right now, some of the higher elevation areas in eastern New York and then western Massachusetts, southern Vermont could see, well in excess of 2 feet of snow. I'm actually seeing one spot in eastern New York getting 30 inches in the higher elevations. And then there's some high-end amounts that show if this persists long enough, you get intense bands of snow setting up. With the local topography, some places could be, looking at close to 3 feet. But like I said, that would be a high-end amount. Yeah. In general, I would say most of this area is looking at 12 to 18 inches as a whole, but those higher elevation spots are where you're going to really see those 18-inch plus totals. Some areas over 2 feet of snow.
Yeah, and a lot of people are. If you're watching, a lot of people have the HRRR pulled up. I know you were talking about 3 feet of snow, but it is in the higher elevations. I'm also gonna show you some of the graphics the National Weather Service put up while I'm talking about this. So, yeah, that's what Ethan is talking to you about. Now, here's why they haven't issued the warning yet, in my opinion, and I want your take on this. There seems to be a temperature battle in parts of New England, especially around Boston. We're looking at when this starts, the temperature is going to be around like 36, 35 degrees, and then starts dropping and then going back up and then going back down. What are the scenarios if any of these situations play out? Like, could we see a lot of rain in some of these areas, or could we see a lot of snow in these areas? Please explain to the audience what I'm talking about, like a temperature model.
Yeah, this is really dependent on the track of that low pressure system, because this track is very strange. And so basically, to sum it up, we have a low pressure system developing right now. It's going to be about off the coast of the Delmarva, off the coast of Maryland, Delaware. That's going to move northeast overnight pretty quickly up towards Massachusetts, and then it's going to be off the coast of Massachusetts by about 150 miles or so by tomorrow morning. And at that point, that's when you're seeing a lot of heavy snow across western Massachusetts, Vermont, New York. And then what's going to happen is later tomorrow afternoon, that low actually recurves back towards the coast.
Yeah.
And it makes landfall. Right now, it's making landfall just north of Boston, and then it swings back around. It does a little loop across Rhode Island, and then it goes back offshore, and then it will eventually head off towards Canada by Wednesday morning.
Yeah, Ethan, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm looking at some of these DBZ values right now, and they are
as you were saying,
like they were but they were cracking. Like they're getting, like some areas are crack. Like I just saw a DBZ value of 49 right there, so I think that should emphasize that this is this heavy snowfall right there. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to tell you what I was seeing while you were talking.
Yeah, and as I was explaining, basically the track of that low is going to be really dependent on where the heaviest snowfall is, because I think New York City, the whole New York City metro area is not going to see much heavy snow because it's close to the coast, and you're going to have just enough warm air from the water that it will stay rain in that region. But you'll see a lot of strong winds. There's actually coastal flood warnings right now for Long Island and parts of the New York City metro area. But just north of there, I'd say once you start getting past, up toward Poughkeepsie and Middletown, New York, that's where the heavy snow will start. Right outside of the metro area, you'll start seeing totals around a foot pretty quickly as you head upstate.
Yeah, that's pretty insane thinking about that. Yeah, this is looking.
And then where the low comes ashore around Boston, you're going to see very high winds. I know there's high wind warnings currently out for basically the entire Massachusetts coast, Cape Cod, and then also for Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And some of these warnings are saying that there are gusts up to 65 miles per hour expected in eastern Massachusetts. So if you're in those areas, definitely be prepared for wind damage and power outages.
Oh, absolutely. And this is what
Those places aren't going to see a lot of snow, but they will definitely be experiencing significant damaging winds for, 8 a.m. Tuesday to 8 a.m. Wednesday. So high wind warning for an entire day, basically Tuesday to Wednesday morning.
Yeah, this is from the National Weather Service. Damaging winds will blow down trees and power lines. Risk for power outages. Travel will be very difficult, especially for high-profile vehicles. So, for those of you in the Boston area, those of you on the coast in the Cape Cod, all those areas, take this very seriously. And like Ethan said, I would advise against traveling until the storm has passed. So,
yeah, another thing, if you have a house up there, make sure you secure any outdoor items that could blow around in the wind. You don't want to have, chairs blowing through windows and stuff like that. So if you live in those areas, definitely secure anything outside you think might blow around, and also be prepared for some power outages, because I definitely think there will be some when that storm comes ashore and you get sustained winds 40 miles an hour for 12 to 24 hours, and then gusts over 60. So yeah, definitely going to be a damaging wind threat for the coastal areas of the Boston metro area, and then also Cape Cod.
Right. All right. So here's my last question. What should people be doing to prepare for this thing? I know we don't have that much time left. This kind of popped up out of the blue. What should people be doing to prepare for the next, 7 hours now until those warnings go into effect? What should people be doing?
Yeah, if you're under the winter storm warning right now, which is, the very northeast corner of Pennsylvania, tiny bit of New Jersey, basically all of a very large part of upstate New York, especially the eastern half, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and then coastal Maine. If you're in any of those areas, I would say don't be traveling anytime past, 6 p.m. today just to be safe, because maybe there's a chance things will start turning over, getting hairy a little before the warnings go into effect. But yeah, definitely be off the roads by sunset. Then just stay home tomorrow. Don't go on any unnecessary travel, especially if you live in an area with higher elevation that's further inland, because that's where I think the heaviest snowfall totals will be. And then obviously, as I said before, if you're on the coast in Massachusetts or New Hampshire, be prepared for significant damaging winds for a long duration. And then also Long Island, there's a coastal flood advisory. It doesn't seem like it'll be that bad down there, but there is some minor flooding expected. So if you're right on the coast, do be prepared for some roads possibly being flooded or beaches being covered and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know back in 2018 there was a pretty big nor'easter around March of 2018. Does this give you that kind of like that kind of memory right there, or is this a little different?
This sort of reminds me of that, but there is one key difference. This storm is basically gonna bomb out much further north than that storm did,
right?
And you won't have the same. There definitely will be strong winds further south of it, but the 2018 storm was historic in that you had a huge pressure gradient across basically the entire mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Like down where I live in Maryland, we had a long duration damaging wind event from that system. I don't think we're going to see that from this storm. Now, down further south in the mid-Atlantic, some places are going to have some coastal flooding along the West Chesapeake, Baltimore, Annapolis, maybe DC area. And then western along the Appalachians, you might see some upslope snow, but I don't think that there's not going to be a long duration damaging wind event like there was with that storm. In fact, I think the strongest winds you'll see anywhere in the mid-Atlantic are going to be gusts to 45, maybe getting close to 50. It's like just below wind advisory criteria.
Right.
But it definitely won't be as bad as the storm in 2018.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we got everything I want to ask you. I think we've wrapped up everything. So thank you for coming on Pat's Path Predictor, Ethan.
You're welcome.
All right, and for those of you guys, please go subscribe to Ethan's channel. The link will be in the description down below. He posts a lot of weather content, posts a lot of shorts, posts some time lapses. I've watched them; they're incredible. But yeah, with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps me out. It helps me make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather. Ethan, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Not a problem.
Stay safe if you're in any of the areas we mentioned.
Yeah. With that being said, guys, have a wonderful day. Start preparing for this. Stay safe.